Me being in my addiction, I was full of self-centered, just everything's about me. It's all about me. I'm starting to experience clubbing, drugs, alcohol, women, all these things that like, before I'd feed off what I thought other people were thinking about me.
I'll go to Thailand, I'll change the brand that I'm taking, it's alcohol. I'll maybe just take ecstasy, maybe take cocaine, maybe I just need to smoke this. So I tried every geographical except for just acceptance, and that's the way I felt. I felt lifeless and I didn't want to live. I couldn't live with drugs and I couldn't live without them. And I don't think I had a drug problem. I think drugs and alcohol are only a symptom of drug addicts' problems or addicts. I don't really see them as dark now. My past has become my biggest asset because now I can use this to help people. So regarding any regrets or anything, I wouldn't change it for the world because I wouldn't be the person who harmed me.
I was in the toilet injecting, I've come out and I've just come out to a melee of violence. It was kicked off. The mixed race guy, I can't even remember his name, he got stabbed about 18 times by some of the TCE guys, and it was just like, and I was sat there and I've just like looked around, I don't want this no more. I do not want to be using to this extent and living how I'm living no more. Boy, was I in for a shock.
Paint a picture for us of the younger version of Eddie Murphy.
Well, basically, a younger version of Eddie Murphy is like what I was talking to you about earlier.
Yes.
A young boy who grew up in the East End of Glasgow, in poverty, there were lots of violence, and the East End, it was a place called Easterhouse, and it was a murder capital of Europe.
Okay.
So there were a lot of gang warfare and gang, knives and different things, and violence and neighbours killing neighbours and, fighting over different things. So it was normal. Not a year come out of that, we just thought everybody had that kind of a issue. But as a little boy, I can always remember feeling frightened, but not allowed to show that I was frightened. I was told as a young child, don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about.
Yeah.
And what happens in this house stays in this house.
Yeah.
So all that stuff that I had to, as a wee boy, the pressure that I had on me when people would ask me, how are you? So when they offered you a draw of marijuana or a stip of the Tipex thinner, it just took all the feelings away. So I'd found a new escape again. So the Tipex thinner and the marijuana was another thing where I'm thinking, what's this? A bit of comfort and ease.
Yeah.
I feel part of this now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. So hit on your home life.
Home life, grew up in a house, poverty, didn't have much. Nobody had much. Sometimes we would have no electricity. My dad would be stealing electricity off the street using the street lights.
Yeah.
And you had to go down the stair and ask. I always remember having to ask the neighbours for, my mum says if you get a wee bowl of sugar or some milk, and she'll give you it back on Tuesday. And I could, even back then, I could see how my wee mind would go. I would go to school and see come the Tuesday, I would go around the back way because I'd be doing all my friends thinking and that family's thinking, saying, my mum's not paid that milk back. And the shame I would feel. So I would have all this, a wee boy with all that pressure and all that fear. And probably my mum's met that woman and spoke to her and she's got that, but my wee mind where I was told not to share nothing and to be quiet, so everything was all compressed down. So the substance was becoming like to deal with I'm going to be all right. And thank God for the substance. I always say to myself, thank God for them because they were an escape for me. I think I might, because what was happening to me as young, my parents noticed things in me, and I don't really share this a lot, but as a child, when I used to get disciplined and battered from my father, I used to go into the room. My dad would hit us with belts. Yeah. But I would hide all the belts. Oh, yeah. Because he'd have them here and have them there, because I knew that what's next with him, And so when I tied the belts in my room, but he'd have loads of them. So after the bet you with the belts, you'd have it on. So you'd had to get into class and you'd have big belt marks and
What's some of the reasons that you used to belt you for?
Sniffing glue, maybe.
Oh, really?
Sniffing glue.
What age was that?
Maybe 8 or 9, you know what I mean, sniffing glue and maybe staying out and you're not meant to or no coming back. And then my dad actually, I was like, I don't know if I spoke about it, the first ever drug I took, was that before that? Was
No,
on here?
you haven't mentioned it.
Well,
this
what
one.
I did, the first ever drug I ever took was, I was saying earlier on, was Benylin.
Yeah.
And that was my mother that gave me that.
Mm.
And she didn't give me it to get me stoned. My dad was alcoholic, and my dad was one of these mad persons that was into football and violence. So you could hear him coming along the street first. It'd be, hell, hell. So my mum didn't drink.
Yeah.
And so she was stuck at 17 or 18 with 2 veins in the house. So the first thing she would do was give us a couple of spoonfuls of Benylin to try and make us sleep, to protect us for what was going to happen, because there were always violence and, you know. So when she gave me that, I just felt something like the Ready Brek kid. I'd found something. So that's what I chased.
How long was you having that? How long was she giving you that for?
Well, I was taking it myself.
Okay, so
she was only giving me that.
She gives you the taster.
She gave me the taster, and I would go looking for it, and I'd be going like that, and I would drink it, and I could feel the warmth, the comfort, the love, the ease, the ease that I just wanted. You know, it was like, oh, I knew it was trauma pain. It was dealing with the trauma. So that was something that I chased all through my life. That was the first bit of comfort, because I'd never cuddled. I'd been told by my parents that they loved me and I loved them. You know, the only time they'd touch me was when they were violent. You know.
So there's a big lack of love.
Yeah, well, what I really feel, I'm not sure, what it's really sad. I used to think, before the drugs were there, I used to think I'm going to kill myself.
Yeah.
And it was all about self-centeredness. It wasn't really about that. It was just about trying to let my parents know, this is how you're making me feel. But I've been told not to tell people how I feel. So my best ideas at maybe 10-year-old was to maybe hang myself, and then they'll come in and they'll see me. I didn't want to die. I just wanted to let them know. I just wanted to let them know, look, is how yous are making me feel.
Yeah.
But I know that was nothing to do with him. That was all about self-centeredness and about me trying to control them. Do you know what I mean? But so thank God drugs came along, because they thought it started going, and it was like, just look for the stuff that's going to give you comfort and ease to deal with the trauma, the pain. Do you know what I mean? And it was normal for everybody around about me was doing it. Do you know what I mean? Most people where I stayed.
Like, it sounds like they didn't, obviously, like I said, the lack of love, but was there anything with your parents that they actually did support you in and did give you any sort of hope or encouragement?
Well, my mum and dad ended up coming to the 12-step programme later on in my life, and that's how I got. So they get help. My mum's a Christian, and that's how they changed their life. And as an example of them, that's how I became. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So was it you that first went to AA and then they come?
No, they went. So they get help, because they were only young people. So by the time they get help, because my mum didn't drink, she became a Christian. My dad was alcoholic, but by the time he get help, I was so messed in drugs. You know what I mean? He was getting better, and I was already sick. So he's changed his life, and he's trying to deal with, you know, with me.
And was there a big difference in him trying to just be a better person?
He didn't know how to, but I found out a lot of stuff about my own father, because I used to think how, if I had a son like me, I would have treated, because my son, I constantly tell him I love him, and we're close and we're tight and all that, but he's never told me I love him, and I never told him. You know, he's never put his hands on me, and never, because we'd never shot. You know what I mean? We were never taught that way. You know, and if I would get into the house, even as a child, when I grew up as an adult, I was still full of resentment with that man, because he used to bully me and beat me up, you know, and nobody knew. My dad could control me. So I could come in a house and my dad was there and 6 other people was there. So if I wanted to do something and you asked me, I would need to look over to my dad, and my dad would give it the nod. And it was like Morse code. He could control me with facial expressions. And there weren't any of that AHDD and do what you want. It was just absolutely terrified. His faces jump. You didn't need to ask how high, you just started jumping.
What was his parents like?
Well, that's what I'm going to talk about. He had a worse life than me.
Okay.
He
Go on.
He was brought up in another part in East End, and he's got like 8 brothers or something like that, and 4 sisters. And he was the 3rd eldest. And his father got murdered in front of him with his best friend. Up the stairs on Christmas Day. So he was left to take care of all the young. So and they were all worse than me with the trauma and the poverty, because it's like years before it. So he was left to fend with him. He was alcoholic, and 80% of them ended up drug addicts, and he was left to, his childhood was gone. He had to just become like a sergeant major and just provide, you know, with crime and provide with everything, be the dad, do you know what I mean? Because he was all just kind of a boy. And so I didn't know this. And then later on, my dad's dead now. He's been dead for nearly 10 years. But after talking to him and talking to my mum, finding out, and even he went into children's homes and all that, and it was, they were talking, it was sexually abused and all that as well. So there were a lot of stuff that I thought my life was bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where I played a victim, what did you do to me? And I think the best painkiller that I could have ever swallowed was forgiveness. Because as a wee boy, my dad used to have a big beard like that. And I always looked at him as having this big beard and a scary man, because I was always small and he was always kind of a big and scary. But as I went on into my adult life, I remember when I decided that I was going to forgive my dad and let it go, and he did his best.
Why did you have that sense of urgency then?
It was in the 12-step programme about making amends. And then I looked at my part, you know what I mean, and things. And I seen that he did his best, rather than me playing the victim, because I've learned that victims don't make it. No. Because victims stay in the problem.
Yes.
You know, and I don't say that to offend anybody. Yeah. Because a lot of people get offended when you say that. And what I just mean is, you need to move on for the incident.
Yeah, well, you're not holding no power. If you're pointing the finger at everyone else, you can't. It's really hard to do something if you don't take responsibility.
Yeah. So I had to swallow that painkiller and forgive him. Not for him, for me.
Yes.
And something happened. Something happened when the next time I seen him, I was with my friends, and I looked at him and I got this. I said, my dad worked in Celtic Park. And everybody would tell him he was a great guy. My dad hadn't touched me or put his hand on me, like physically, since I was a child, but 15, 20 years have went by. Okay. But I'm still full of resentment because what he's done to me, you know, and my upbringing and all that, you know, and everybody else is telling me he's a good guy. Do you know what I mean?
So what I want to ask you is why, I know he changed later on in his life. He made a comeback, okay? But I know, like you said, his dad didn't. Why does some people, they don't make the comeback?
They don't make a comeback. I think basically everybody's different. It's like you need to be ready. There's a surrender. Do you know what I mean? I remember being in different prisons and young offenders and all that, and saying I was ready. You know, it was like I was talking about. I got lots of people contacting me and asking me for help, and the phone goes quite. Usually Sunday night or a Monday morning, you'll get a message on Facebook saying I'm done for the party and I need help. I need help. Can you help me? And I'm like, aye, blah blah blah. There's a meeting. You can go here. No, I'm definitely going. Contact them on Tuesday. I've had a wee bowl of soup and a bottle of Lucozade, and I think I'm really all right. And I think I'll maybe come next week. They're good places, but they're not for you.
The pain. Sunday, they're all the pains. They're hungover. They're on a come down. The pain's fresh. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you recovered. You're like, oh, the urgency's not there.
But usually that's the cocaine addicts and the alcoholics. You know what I mean? The bingers. But when you're dealing with like heroin addicts, they're done. They're completely done, or they're just maintaining the pain. Some people just get that much trauma. And there's two. I actually I was back home and I had a friend I was helping, and he had a heroin problem, methadone problem. I took him to a conference thing, and there was a guy who was a cocaine addict giving him advice. How he was only like 2 days coming off of heroin and methadone, and this guy's giving him advice what to do, to go and do cold water and go and do this and do this and do that. And I was like, I ended up saying to him, have you ever took heroin? It's like, no. I went, have you ever took methadone? No. I says, what did you take? He went, cocaine. I went, it's a total different beast. Yeah. You're coming off, you have many 12-step meetings. It's available for people who have problem with alcohol, drugs. You know, I've got a good fellowship of people here who are all clean and sober and exercise. I've also got a good fellowship of people who do drink, and it doesn't mean that your life's over. No. You know, I still go out and have a good time. Yeah. You know, if this was all about being able to do the things and enjoy your life, I wouldn't have been put here. I'd be locked in a house and saying, I can't go anywhere. Do you know what I mean? But there's some practices that you get taught in the 12-step programme. It's all about examining yourself at night. You know, it's a 10-step, doing an examination. Have I got any resentments? Have I harmed anybody today? Do I owe any amends? You know? And then On awakening, I wake up and I do my meditation.
How do you meditate?
Me, I do different forms. Sometimes I'll get different guided meditations. I'll do a Qigong meditation. Sometimes I'm actually trained to be an Aki detox practitioner, but I don't use it. It was only when I worked in that field.
Okay.
Mary, for me, meditation is just about listening. You know what I mean? And some prayer as well. Prayer is about, just asking for, this. And I've learned that for me, I believe in God, but I don't believe in God's outside us. I believe that God's inside us, and that's where I need to go. And the rest of the program that I'm talking about, see this busy mind I've had all my life. Way I can explain it is like, see one of the buzzing fridges.
Yes.
I always had one of them, and I still get that today.
Yeah. 27
years a day, I can still, and I've realised that I'm no my thinking. And I've realised that this addiction lives in me and it doesn't go anywhere. That's people's problem. That's why they go back out and get drunk and full of drugs again, because they think it's gone. I mean, you've got this. I don't mean you're an addict for life. Once a junkie, always. What I mean is the thinking. Everybody's got this thinking, And I have to disconnect from my thinking. It's the same as sometimes when Elvis Presley comes on in my motor and it's fucking car in a trap. Sometimes I think I'm Elvis Presley. But I'm not really Elvis Presley, do you know what I mean? It's a radio. And my mind's a bit like that. When I meditate, I can disconnect from it and realise that I'm no my mind. Because my mind's either in the future, full of fear that something's not going to work out. You know what I mean? Or it's in the past, about regret, shame, you're letting people down. Who wants to be with you? And they talk about, I've spoke to you regarding the Edgar Tolle stuff. I love about the power of now. The power in that, and sometimes even that's too much on me. If I get a difficult day, I break it up into three. Get through the morning, get through the afternoon, and that's the way I got through when I first got clean and sober. Don't use a day, and then that turned into 20 odd years ago. And do you know what I mean?
Small steps.
Aye, and it's more normal for me to be. Don't get me wrong, I still look at it and I think that'd be nice to get a big glass of wine.
When's the last drink you did have?
Well, it's probably over 27 years ago. Really? I've not done alcohol. Wow. Aye. So, well done. But it does look appealing because everybody likes an escape. But I still have the same issues with chocolate. Do you know what I mean? It's the same symptoms there. I got 2 bars of chocolate back for Scotland that somebody gave me for me and my girlfriend. So I've told her about them and I went, there's that chocolate there, and I put it in and I've ate mine, and hers is still lying there for 2 days, man, and I'm like, fucking hell, man. And I went in, took one bit.
Yes.
And then I've took another bit. And so she decided that, she wants to have her chocolate now a week later. And then she's like, where is my chocolate? And the first thing I'd done was I came out with lies. I gave it to the security and the dog. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. There's a story in Dopamine Nation. A woman eats their children's chocolate and she lies about it. She lies to them, and then the children still hold on to it to this day, but she did tell them the truth after a week later.
I ended up,
do you know what I mean?
I ended up saying her I ate it. Do you know what I mean? I'm sorry. So that's what I would do if I'd done something like that. That would probably affect my consciousness. So when I do an inventory, then I would say, have you been dishonest? You know what I mean? Or have you told any lies? Do you owe an amends? And if I do, then I'll put it down. And I'll go and try. And sometimes I don't, and I just hopefully it goes away. But it affects.
Still holding on to you like a little monkey in your back.
Then the buzzing fridge is there.
Yes.
Totally. And I don't like living with a buzzing fridge, because what I try and do is I try and find things to quiet that buzzing fridge down.
Totally. Sorry to cut you, but I've got a great one. I've been scared of the dentist for years and years and years. And the other day, I just had enough. Like for 2-3 weeks, I was like, right, I've got to get this. I've got root still. Went to take a tooth out and he didn't take it out. And I said, right, I've got to get this because I know it's not helping my health. Like I'm eating and it's painful. And I just went, I done it, and it was like I scored a goal at Sunday League or won a big pot of money. And I felt so relieved over the past couple of weeks. And then but what else is holding me back? What else do I keep meaning to do? Well, I've been thinking about starting a podcast, and I need to do more talking on camera because I want to impact the world and share what I have. Yeah. And here I am,
living a dream.
So yes,
lost dreams awakening.
So I challenge you to write down a list of your fears, not the fears that you know that are bad for you, the fears that you know that will evolve you into becoming your best self? Okay, so next question. What are some of your darkest days? What are the days that you look back now and you go, oh my God, I'm so glad, I'm proud of myself from where I've come from to where I am now?
I think basically just I don't really see them as dark no. My past has become my biggest asset, because now
Totally.
I can use this to help people.
Yes.
So regarding any regrets or anything,
Yeah.
I wouldn't change it for the world, because I wouldn't be the person who I am today.
Totally. And that takes me back to another point that I want to get through to the podcast, is exactly what you've just said there, is Eddie's like all the problems and all the challenges that I've gone through in my life have helped me evolve into the person that I am. So I don't look at challenges and problems as negatives. Like, I want bigger problems because they've helped me become the person I am now.
And then when you get in the past, it's dishonesty. Because when you start thinking about the dark stuff, what happened, what it did, it's like, well, wait a minute, there's nothing in there, because it's all lies. You know what I mean? It's gone.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, so once you just accept it and use it, you know, it's happened, you don't deny it. So once you've got this, it's like me saying to a pregnant woman, I understand you and I help you. So now I use that experience to try and inspire somebody, rather than before I used to try and hide it for interviews and people and what I've got, but now it's become a tool. You know, but I'll only just tell everybody it. Do you know what I mean? It's I'll take an opportunity if I feel that somebody is wanting to help.
Well, are there any stories that you feel that the world would it'd be valuable to the world to know?
Just I think valuable is basically there's help out there. You know what I mean? There's help for people, because what's happening, and for me, it's the thing, you're getting all these kind of life coaches and different things that is like helping people and things like that, and there's got lots of treatment centres, but some people just haven't got the finances for that, because what happens is with people, their money goes on drugs and alcohol. And I know that the most spiritual thing I can do is give somebody my time, but when you go to the 12-step meetings, it's absolutely fun and for free. Do you know what I mean? So that's what I would like to people to know. That
how can they get involved in that?
Well, they can just go on the website and find it. Do you know what I mean? You've got Narcotics Anonymous, you've got Alcoholics Anonymous and Pattaya, but you've also got it all over the world. I can go anywhere in the world, India. You know, we've got a big conference coming up. We've got people from Pakistan, Canada, America, all different places all over the world come to talk. So I could go there and reach out. It's like it's a fellowship, and they'll put me up, they'll support me, they'll help me. So it's everywhere. So people don't know about it. People think this all costs money, you know, but it's for fun and it's for free, and there's no professionals, and your own anonymity is protected, which what I like. You know, I can blow my own anonymity because I'm self-employed and I have different businesses, and some people have like doctors and, you know, different professions where they need to protect it. So don't think that you go to these places and everybody, you know, I'm only telling that I go there. And it's transformed my life as a result, and it's given me a power in my life to give me so much better life for the stuff that I've got and the stuff that I do.
How long did it take you to recover?
I don't think physically I'm never going to recover.
Okay.
You know, because I'd probably get worse I'd probably crave drugs more than what I did when I was younger, because like anything, any illness that you've got, it gets worse by age, because your body stops producing the enzymes and the acetones and the stuff. So the craving would be much more. So I don't think physically recovered, but I've recovered mentally when it comes to alcohol and drugs. So I can see the truth.
How long did it, because like you said,
well,
it dark days and
it didn't happen. I still had an idea that I could use one day secretly in the back of my mind, but not I went through the 12-step program. It smashed that illusion I've got. You know what I mean? And still to this day, when I'm not doing all my practices, I have that idea that it comes back. I don't think I'll ever recover. I think I've just learned to live with this.
But you've done a flip on your life.
Oh, my life's totally changed, but people just think you just put down the drugs and you wake up one day and you decide I'm going to stop. No.
But like, how long did it take you to feel like, oh wow, I feel so much better?
All right. Well, probably I felt better after like 90 days or something, 3 months. I felt physically better, but I think that can be dangerous and all. Because the good thing about recovery is you get better And the bad thing, you get better.
Yeah.
You know, I was in a better place when my arse was on fire. Do you know what I mean? I was like, I need help.
Yeah.
After 3 months, I knew everything.
Yeah.
And I don't need any help anymore.
Yeah,
And that's what they say about recovery as well. The good thing about recovery is you get your feelings back. And the bad thing about recovery is you get your feelings back. So I had to learn to feel feelings instead of trying to suppress them with drugs.
Sometimes, like, you celebrate, don't you? You feel like, oh, I've done
I deserve it. I pat the back. I'm a man.
Yeah, let's have a treat.
Well, that's what they talk about. It's like
relapse, yeah.
That's that Elvis Presley thing that I'm talking about. And if I've not got a 12-step program and fellowship to go to meetings to talk about that, because see, when I go and share my truth, people can relate and identify, because I still get that. But what I've done, it's not went away. It comes maybe when I'm not doing all the right things. Well, you know, if I'm not doing my practices and I'm wrapped up in myself and I'm selfish. So that's not went away. But what I've done is just accepted it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I learned to live with it. And it gets that loud, I think I'll go and do these practices again, because it's, but maybe I'll start do chocolate and do sex and do everything else to try and, I'll not do drugs, but if I continue that way, I do believe that drugs and alcohol would be an option again.
It was a safe haven for addicts to find recovery in the city of Plymouth. And all this was going on in an area that I'd used in, that I grew up in, making them real safe spaces, stage 1 houses for people to come in to detox in, do you know what I mean? And I set up like an empire of recovery in the city of Plymouth. Ecstasy become everything until it become nothing. Other drugs took hold and took over. And within a very short time period frame for me of taking ecstasy, I found myself injecting intravenously using amphetamine. And, you know, as a 16, 17-year-old doing that stuff, you know, it's kind of quite, you know, it was quite powerful for me. And, you know, you kind of get recognized for it by a lot of the older crew, you know, it's, but it wasn't all bad. You know, there was some real highs, you know, amongst the lows. And, you know, I kind of didn't start hitting rock bottom till later on, but I went at it quick. I went and got myself, you know, I started, like, where I had all fucking services involved in my life and everything. I went to the doctor. I said I had a massive Valium problem. You know, I was scripted fucking high amount of benzodiazepam at like 16, 17 years of age. High amount of temazepam, 16, 17 years of age. You know, I kind of prescribed methadone before I was even into heroin, but I was a chronic amphetamine user throughout this time. You know, even though the rave scene was going on, those kind of days were getting numbered, but, you know, I was kind of hanging around with guys that were going thieving in Europe. You know, I used to go with a guy called Zico, God rest his soul, he's dead now. We used to go over there and, you know, we'd be sneaking in places and, you know, creeping hotels late at night and, you know, getting up to all sorts, do you know what I mean? Feeding the addiction and, you know, having some touches and having some real difficult time. I remember one time getting caught in a hotel in the Swiss Alps about 3 o'clock in the morning. Some guy chasing me with a machete. Do you know what I mean? I'm like 17 years old and I'm running down and Zeke, he's gone in my car. I had a little Metro Turbo at the time. He's gone in the car. I'm thinking I'm getting hacked up here. And the guy never got hold of me. And how Zeke, he was gone. But he came back and he found me down some country road in the Swiss Alps. It was fucking wolves howling. It was like, oh man, what a turnout. But, you know, managed to get to some kind of safe, got the car. And,
what was you doing then to get chased with a machete?
We was in the hotel creeping a room and someone had woke up. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, all fucking not good stuff really. And, yeah, it was kind of like, it was like the in thing to do, the cool thing to do. Where we were from, if you got in with the older boys who were hitting up Europe, you were seen to be, they were coming back with big parcels of jewelry. They were kind of, you know,
making it.
Yeah, because all the systems in play over there, the border crossings, do you know what I mean? I remember one time going across the border, and I've gone to swallow a bit of hashish that I've got, and it's in a sealed bag, and we're at customs, coughed it up, it's landed right on the sniffer dog's nose. And the dogs just looked at me like bemused, but didn't pick up on it.
No, they didn't, no.
No, got through, but yeah. Something you get a slap on the wrist for today, but you'd probably got chucked in the jail or got 3 months for back in the day. You know?
Okay.
So yeah, funny. But we used to shoot all over the place, end up in Amsterdam, be down in, you know, in Zurich. My first kind of introduction to Needle Park in Zurich, Mento. this park. It was just crazy. It was like all store set, people just walking in, having hits off the street. Really opened my eye. Do you know what I mean? And just craziness I was exposed to really as a teenager. And but the high life never lasts. Never lasts. You know what I mean? You can be flying high for a good period of time in your drug addiction. But the flying high, there comes big lows.
Oh, yes.
In my experience, them big lows have outweighed any of the big highs. You know, you can be rocking and rolling, thinking you're fucking this. Do you know what I mean? Before you know it, you're flat on the floor, and you know you're out kind of just feed an addiction that's kind of got you old, that you don't want it to have you old, and you're kind of using, and you just don't want to be using, and you know later on that's what become. Yeah, there's been, you know, I had an early kind of introduction into the recovery process. I kind of like, you know, I was in a blues club. I was down in Union Street one night, and I was with a guy I'd met. He was a mixed race guy and really nice guy. He was like around the rave scene. He was from London, and I was in the toilet and I was injecting loads of speed. I was a really chronic amphetamine user, and all, you know, I was scripted all these other stuff, and you know, if I could put it in my arm, I would have. Do you know what I mean? If I couldn't put it in my arm, I'd force it away to get it in my arm. You know, bad. I remember dirty hits off speed, putting in congealed stuff, forcing it in. You know, I wasn't letting that stuff go. It was kind of chronic come the end, you know, and I was in this blues club, and it was all kicked off down the malt house a couple of nights before, week before, whatever, with all the swilly lot and all the TC, which was like the local football hooligans in the town, and it kicked off, and it was real heavy. A few people got really hurt, and I was in this blues club, and it all kicked off there. Poor Avril, who was managing the place, I was in the toilet injecting. I've come out, and I've just come out to a melee of violence. It was kicked off. The mixed race guy, I can't remember his name, he got stabbed about 18 times by some of the TCE guys, and it was just like, and I was sat there, and I've just like looked around, and some of us people have the most sincere desire to stop using in the most maddest of places. And I, at a moment of clarity, I know it today, in the most maddest of places, I come out of that and I said, I don't want this no more. I do not want to be using to this extent and living how I'm living no more. Boy, was I in for a shock. I kind of went back to, I was living in Stonehurst. My mother said, my mother was so good throughout my addiction, as fear-based as I was around my father. You know, as much as the dysfunction that was going on at home, she would always have a bed for me. Oh. My mother would always have a room for me. Would never, only once did she turn her back on me, and that was one time. I remember I got arrested for I was a commercial burglary on the old AA building. It's like a shower room place down in Plymouth city centre. But I had a warrant outstanding up in Exeter. Listen to this. This is weird. Hopefully they don't pick up on it. But what happened? I got taken into Charles Cross for about 5 days. And I was ill. Back in the day, they ain't giving you your benzos. They're not giving you no methadone. You're lucky if you're getting a bit of juice, you know, like Lagactyl juice, or, you know,
hospital.
They wouldn't take me to hospital back in the day. No, they would. I'll share some stuff about this in a minute. But back in the day, you weren't getting nothing. You're ill. In them police cells, you're ill. You get to see the doctor. You're lucky if you get a couple of DF118s, you know. Right. And I was on a heavy script for a teenager. They held me in Charles Cross for 5 days. I was so poorly, Gaz.
Prison.
Yeah.
Jail.
The police station, or police station. But what they done then, they took me up on an outstanding warrant to Exeter, for some other offence that I'd committed up there. I can't remember it rightly, but I can remember going into Exeter Crown Court cells. It felt like the dungeons. It felt like how I was feeling, because I was rattling off methadone. I had none for 5 days, no Valium for 5. I was ill. You know, I wasn't fitting. Do you know what I mean? How they could allow that is shocking, you know, inhumane. But that's how it was in the day. And I remember I was going into Exeter cells, and I seen these barristers there. And I said, excuse me. I said, could you represent me? I said, I've never been in trouble in my life. I said, and didn't think nothing of it. He's like, he's come into the Crown Court cell a bit later, this guy, and he tried to say, I'll represent you, we'll deal with it today. The judge is happy to deal with it. And I'm thinking, what? So I said, look, I've never, you know, been in trouble. What the warrant I had in Plymouth, what they brought me there, it was no charge brought to it. The judge, one of the worst circuit judges at the time, I think it might have been Cottle or Neville or someone, seen me that day. And because it was, you know, He gave me a 2-year probation order and some other kind of order, but lo and behold, known to them, I've got previous, and I just got a 2-year probation order, maybe 3 weeks before, in Plymouth Crown Court for another offence. So when I got released from there on a probation order with them not checking my criminal record, yeah, and then going back to Plymouth, sitting my probation officer, I know the probation officer now because I've worked with him. He's looked at my file and he's gone, hey, you got a probation order here. He said, how's that come around? I said, I don't know. And he went, oh, okay. And just moved on from it. But I believe that my mother's story is, I got released from there and I ran from there to my chemist to get my Valium and methadone because I was so ill, Gaz, so ill. And I bumped my mother. I walked past her, down in Stonehouse. She was walking up near the Melbourne Park. And I just ran back. She completely blanked me, looked to the floor. And that was the only time my mother has really lost face with me and kind of been cold towards me. Do you know what I mean? Because I looked so poorly and ill because of my addiction. You know, again, I went there, got me Valium and me methadone, and bang, went back, and you know, just onwards, you know, as it goes. But
she couldn't bear looking at you.
Yeah, I can remember them, and I don't blame her. You know, I was kind of like, come the end of my use, and I used to have people cross the street. They all put a title on me that, you know, when the AIDS virus come around, because I was like a walking 1 mil for years. You know, I kind of walking like the speed use, like a 1 mil syringe. I was that big. Yeah. You know, and people used to cross the street. People would spit at me. You know, I can remember times I was injecting dirty water in puddles because people wouldn't let me in their flats outside. I get reminded of stuff like that. You know, it became very horrendous, my addiction come the end. And, you know, I kind of, you know, I don't forget them dark times. You know, I kind of know I've had a lucky escape, and, you know, there's better men than me that are kind of not living in a fruitful life today, who have perished. People that used to give me a real hard time. You know, I remember a lot of Scousers when I was young. They were all down, breaking into bookies, and they would all give me a dog's life for being on, you know, the amount of Valium I was on, and, you know, the IV using I was doing. I can remember times waking up with my ears bleeding. Do you know what I mean? I can remember times being restrained by police in Plymouth Town Centre and pissing blood the next day because they've yanked my balls that much. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, just kind of dismissing that kind of stuff. And, you know, you don't forget, but you kind of, you know, you remember this stuff. Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
So when that was all kicking off at the Blues Club, okay, you had that epiphany, great stuff. Where did you go from there?
I went back to my mother's house and I said, I'm not using no more, to myself. And boy, was I in for a shock. You know, I remember I was in the bottom room at the time, got in there, locked it all up because I didn't want me for my father. If I went out of bed in the morning, he'd be kicking the door through, dragging me out, one of them. Do you know what I mean? And I was in there and I just tried stopping. I tried stopping of my own accord. And as you know, if you've been using benzodiazepam, you've been using methadone to mazepam, and you're street, you can't just stop them kind of drugs like that. You need medical supervision. Yeah, but I was adamant. I was adamant that I wanted to stop. And I remember just kind of stopping and losing my mind, going into a psychotic state. You know, I've had psychotic episodes. I've been in kind of, you know, I've been in Moorhaven as a youngster trying to level out in detox, the local psychiatric ward. I've experienced them dynamics in them places. And I used to feel really comfortable in them places, if I'm honest. And I remember just laying there and wanting to die, basically. Couldn't give a toss if I died, if I lived. And I remember my mother coming down and saying, "You're right, son." And I told her I swallowed the quilt because my stomach felt so heavy, and, you know, my mind wasn't there. I tripped out. I went into another kind of dimension. It was really sincere and up for recovery. I got a really good recovery-based counsellor who was in recovery himself, who kind of, I got open with and honest with about everything, yeah? And that was the ball I was learning to kind of play, to be honest about everything now, to start being real about the deal and all the kind of stuff I've witnessed, I've seen, I've kind of done, all the resentment I was carrying, all the shame-based shit that I was carrying that I shouldn't have been carrying was kind of I needed to be rid of it. You know, and I confided in this counsellor and everything, and, you know, and life started to take on a new meaning. I didn't have nothing. Do you know what I mean? I kind of was broken. I kind of remember living on like £14 a week, and then that was reduced to £8 a week because of social loans and all that kind of stuff. But I felt some kind of contentment and happiness in my life for once in my life, you know, and it was a life that I could see that I could live without using, and I was attending religiously meetings every day. And I
okay.
had some real good role models in my life. A guy called Dave Mack at the time, you know, shout to you, Dave Mack. I know you're no longer here. God bless you, my friend. But he was all about the fellowship in Bristol at the time. It was huge. You know what I mean? The fellowship. I know I shouldn't, you know, it's traditions and all that. You shouldn't mention fellowship and whatnot. But this 12-step fellowship at the time was very much vibrant, alive, and had lots of numbers. And I got very much involved with all that. Do you know what I mean? I should drag people from the treatment centre to come along to the meetings. I was heightened like Mr. Recovery.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, I was taking on service commitments at the biggest meetings. You know, I was sharing at every meeting I was going. It was there. I was in tune with this stuff. And you meet some good people along the way. You meet some not so good people on the way. And it's really weird. I've got a tattoo on the back of my neck. You see on the back of my neck there?
Yep.
There's 168 initials of friends of mine who have died because of drug addiction from growing up, through my using and through recovery. And I continue to add to that.
168.
168.
Wow.
So when that's, you know, I kind of feel like a lot of them are with me a lot of the time in my ongoing journey of recovery and living clean. And yeah, it's quite powerful. And, you know, I'm in Bristol and you're
So
amongst it. And
why,
Dave Mackey was like an idol at the time for me. Do you know what I mean? And there
why
was
can't you mention, sorry to cut you, but why can't you mention other fellowships?
well, they say about traditions, dynamics, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, you know, predominantly, you know, my fellowship is Narcotics Anonymous. You know, that's kind of where I kind of, but I don't really want to kind of get into traditions, you know. I'll do whatever I need to do at any given time. I got to 20 years in my recovery and I felt like I was spiritually dying in Plymouth. You know, I'd kind of tell you a story here. I set up one of the biggest recovery setups in the city of Plymouth and revolutionized recovery in my city, you know, back in 2011. And you know, with that comes a lot of melee. With that, for me, comes success. With that, you're flying high. With that, you become a target. With that, it spoils your fellowship support that you've kind of grown to love. You know, I've had to make switches from fellowship to different fellowship to get my kind of spiritual connection kept right, to keep my batteries charged in recovery. And it can cause all kind of dynamics. You go to that fellowship, you're not in you're breaking into it, and I think, piss off. It's not a fucking football match. Do you know what I mean? This is like, you know, unconditional stuff that matters to the soul of the recovering person. You shouldn't, you know, and for me anyway.
Irrelevant.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But a lot of people get on that, unfortunately. And so yeah, you know, it's kind of been, but yeah, I'll tell you a bit about my experience, because this is a bit of like godly stuff, alignments. And, you know, I ended up moving after my experience in Bristol of, you know, heightened after treatment, living up there in a dry house, you know, kind of, I lost my mother up there when I was in Bristol. God bless my mother. My mother was, I was telling the story earlier about my father. He'd lost touch with his brother, but short around that time, my mother died. She had a heart transplant, my mother, Janet, God bless her. And she had a heart transplant at 47 years of age, and she died on Valentine's Day. On Valentine's Day, with somebody else's heart. What is the chances of somebody dying with somebody else's heart on the day of the heart? That's what happened to my mother, God bless her. But that's how special she was. That's how I treat that. She was a very special human being. And but yeah, weird. And I remember I was living in the dry house. You know, I got the news that a relationship I was in I got in an early recovery relationship. It was all messy. She ended up sleeping with someone else in the fellowship, and they were on a tobacco run together. And because Bristol at the time, because it was full of like gangsters, London, it was like a mini London, Bristol, but they were all into the tobacco. I wasn't. They would pop the piss in. Do you know what I mean? But a lot of them had built kind of, they were sustaining a really good, wealthy way of life. And I used to be really jealous and envious of all these people that were kind of securing. But they would get me to drive a car sometimes, pay me 60 quid for the day when I come out of treatment, just this little income, you know, would help out. And kind of, you know, that wasn't my thing. I kind of, and she ended up sleeping with someone on a tobacco run, and I was living with her in a dry house, and it slaughtered me. It was just after my mother died, and the whole combination of all that hit me like a ton of bricks, and I knew I had to move. And I had one friend at the time. He no longer speaks to me now. Weird, isn't it? How you kind of lose close friends when you kind of succeed and do well in your life. And I ended up going to Weston-super-Mare, sleeping on his sofa for a period of time. And then a friend of mine who was a big tobacco baron, Brummy Lee Bowen, God bless him, really nice fella. He had he started all the dryerses off in Weston-super-Mare, and I liked Lee. He was a really good character. He had a good spirit about him. And he come and picked me up from the dry house. He took me down. And then when it was time for me to get me furniture, he even come and picked me up and got my furniture, whatever bits I had. And he gave me his flat in Weston-super-Mare. God bless you, Lee. He gave me his flat in the town centre of Weston-super-Mare. I was living in the shrubbery, homeless hostel at Christmas time, broken, absolutely in turmoil, grieving, broken relationship. My whole comfort blanket had gone, fuming that she had slept with someone else, raging that he had kind of, do you know what I mean, crossed that boundary, and I lost my mother.
Still clean.
Still clean. And the days were feeling so long, but I wasn't using. I was staying clean, going to meetings, doing the right thing, connecting with the stuff, going to codependency meetings. Do you know what I mean? Embracing the whole recovery vibe that was on offer in Weston-super-Mare. And Weston-super-Mare really held me at that time in my recovery, like nothing else. And Lee Bowen really come through. He moved all my stuff down. Another friend of mine, Sheridan, his dog Murdoch, kept me going. Do you know what I mean? At the time, and you know, God bless them people. And Roni, his missus at the time, kind of helped me through that experience. And, you know, and I was really involved with sponsorship at the time. I had old Remy sponsored me for years. He has, good guy. He's been with me through day dot, and I've gone through the green and gold and the program with him, and, you know, continued to do all that stuff. And, you know, Lee Bowen moved me down to my first flat there, and, you know, and things really started to take a turn for the better then. Do you know what I mean? It was like after the grieving process started healing, getting better through pain, we grow and all that stuff. And, you know, I kind of was having a new experience in living, and I really didn't want to use. I even stopped smoking cigarettes because that was a contributing factor to my mother dying. So I quit the nicotine.
The love in you started growing, and the care.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The people that I never used to empathize with in meetings, who were sharing shit, broken relationships, losing people, I could now understand and get a deeper meaning around and connect with it all a bit more.
Compassion.
And that's what I've done. And, you know, I ended up securing a job back in Plymouth a couple of years later after having a good recovery experience in Weston, healing from a lot of my trauma and past. I got a job for a Christian organisation. My friend was leaving in Monterbury House. And I turned this Christian hostel, homeless hostel, into a recovery house, into a dry house, implemented morning meetings, you know, one-to-one stuff, making sure people were there, changing the license agreements so that people would go to meetings, started turning it, revolving it out. These guys like Lee Bowen, a friend of mine, was like doing with his dry houses in Weston. He was instrumental in getting in another guy called Judge, you know, a friend of mine. They were in the recovery field up there. They had set up dry houses previous to me. They were sharing their experience with me, what to do. Even though this experience of this dry house, I was working for an organisation. Yeah, the organisation was a bit crooked, this one I was working for, even though it was Christian. Okay. The chairman, the chief executive, was called Mike Emini, but it was like Mike Enemy. That's how it felt come the end, because I ended up, whilst I was there, you know, it was like, I wanted to train as an addictions counsellor. I wanted to kind of, and I ended up, the course, Broadreach House were running a course at the time, same as Cloud's House, but it cost £3,500. And I was kind of, I ain't got the money for that, blah, blah, blah. So the organisation, I went to the papers, the local paper, and I gave my story.
Okay.
And I gave my story about my life as an addict and how I wanted to do it. And I brought all the funding around for everybody on the course. Then the organisation had stepped in and said, oh, we're paid for you, Lee. Do you know what I mean? So I got double whammy. So I ended up training as an addictions counsellor whilst I was there, getting my placement hours at Broadreach House and at Monterbury House. And I'd done loads of training in supported housing. And I was flying high with this stuff. But the thing was, when you're flying high, you got to expect to kind of hit the floor sometimes, because people will always try to shoot you down.
For me, I grew up in a nice place, a place called All Sages, just outside of Stoke-on-Trent. You know, it's a good community of people, you know, but when I got to the age of about 15, 16, you know, I moved on into the city, you know, into Stoke-on-Trent more. And I started finding more like-minded people, you know, people of colour, you know, where All Sages, there's not much colour there, you know, so I never really felt like I was part of these people. You know what I mean? I always had friends, and, you know, I wasn't treated bad in any kind of way, you know what I mean? It wasn't, you know what I mean? So, but I never had that feeling. I always felt like I was missing something. You know, so anyway, got into Stoke-on-Trent people, and it's a mix You got Arabs, you got black people, you got white people, you got Russia, you got everything, you know. And I felt, this is my place. These are my people. You know, at 15, 16, I'm like, wow, you know, I like these people.
Yeah.
You know, so I started hanging around with these people, spending more time, you know, and as, you know, one club, you go to another club, one party, you go to another party, you're meeting a large range of people, you know. And for me, I was always this outgoing guy, you know, because from a child, I've always been adrenaline.
Yeah.
You know, because I grew up as a swimmer.
Okay.
You know, I was a professional swimmer from the age of, I don't know, 5,
really?
maybe.
Oh, impressive, man.
As long as I can remember, you know, my dad just chucked me in a pool and that was it. From the age of 5 till about 16 years old, you know, I'll be training every day. And then got in the swimming galas on the weekend, you know, just that adrenaline pumping all the time. But then I got to about 16 years old and then, you know, I had a bit of a decision. I either carry on swimming or I start to make money. And when I was growing up, I was always told, you know, my parents always drilled into me, we've got no money.
Oh,
you know, we can't afford this, we can't afford that. You know, it was always in my head that money's an issue.
Limiting belief.
Yes, money's an issue. So when I got to 16, you know, came to the end of high school, I was offered an apprenticeship. I jumped at that. I just jumped straight at that. I was like, yes, money. You know what I mean? I don't know anything about electrics. I don't know what I want to do. I know I don't want to go to college. So I'm going to do this.
Prioritize the money.
The money came first straight away. You know, and I just dropped out the swimming. You know what I mean? And I was a high standard. You know, I was, you know, I competed. My main races were 50 front crawl, 100 meters front crawl, and 50 meters butterfly. You know, those were my, you know, gold medal times. You know, I hold records for years in them races. You know, but then I dropped that, and since, you know, I've always looked back and thought, where would I be if I carried on?
Yeah.
You know, because my life took a turn at 16. A complete spiral of events, but I didn't see it until about 21 years old.
Okay.
You know, because I started making money as an electrician, you know, apprenticeship, you know, so I had money coming in. But as that life goes, you know, I'm 18 years old, 16 to 18. I'm starting to experience clubbing, drugs, alcohol, women, all these things that like, you know, I hadn't thought about before for 16 years. You know what I mean? I hadn't really thought about. So I was attracted straight away.
What was the first time you had
drug? Started smoking weed 16, and then it carried on to, you know, partying, and then cocaine came about, pills came about, ecstasy, MDMA, alcohol, it all came about, you know, and those were the good times in my head.
Okay.
Those were the good times. And then as time moved on, you know, it got to about 2021. You know, I'm selling coke. I'm making more money. I'm getting addicted to the dealing lifestyle. You know what I mean? Fast money. You know what I mean? I loved it. You know, I loved it. I'd make my money from my apprenticeship and I'd put it into some cocaine. I'd flip it back. You know what I mean? Off to the races. You know what I mean?
Social capital as well. Because like, you know, like when you've got a good job or like you advertise that you're an influencer, you get social credit. People like, but same in the drug world. Do you know what I mean? And you come around at 2-3 o'clock in the morning and you've got fucking a bag of fucking a lucky dip of everything. You're the king. You're the king of that party.
That
you know,
respect that you get. You know what I mean? The respect you get from other people. You know, having that power over somebody else's life, over someone else's night, really. But it feels like someone else's life. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I'm not going to give you what you want because I don't like you. Having that kind of stubbornness, that attitude, that it wasn't good. You know, it was so unhealthy, but I was addicted to that lifestyle. But it didn't last long. For me, it lasted a couple of years because, you know, this is where things started to get dark for me. I was sniffing coke all the time, every day, at work, at nighttime, to stay awake so I can go sell more, to get more. And it was just a constant loop, you know. And one day it got to the point I couldn't put any more up my nose. I couldn't get any more. I couldn't get any. My nose was blocked, both sides. You know what I mean? I couldn't get any more. And it was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, you know. That's just when the night starts. 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. You know what I mean? These were going for day sessions. And I look over to the side, you know, and I'm with some, you know, quite, you know, let's say, I don't know, vicious people. I don't know, you know, kind of not the best people that you wanted to be around, not people I want to introduce to my mum. You know what I mean? I'm around them kind of people. And I look to the side, I look on the stairs, and I see my friend there, and he's got this metal pipe thing in his hand, you know, and he's there in the corner just smoking it. I'm like, what's that?
That's next level.
I've not seen that. You know what I mean? What's that? You know, and he was like, oh, nothing. I was like, no.
Oh, yeah.
What's that, man? You know, because I know, look, I'm trying to get high. My high's coming down. You know, I'm looking for the next high.
Yeah. You're hungry.
So, hungry. And I could see the look in his eyes because he knew that this was I'd never done this before. You know, crack cocaine. That's when things just went. He gave me the pipe. I put a rock on. I lit it up. That was it. All my fucking problems are gone. Now I knew I could smoke it to get high and I didn't have to use my nose. I didn't touch cocaine again after that. I didn't sniff it again.
No.
It went straight to crack. And then everything changed. My whole life changed.
What's the feeling of crack?
Immense euphoria.
Okay.
Immense euphoria. And you feel like you're aware, but you're too aware to the point where you're distracted, if that makes sense. Like you're very aware of what's going on around you. You're sharp, extremely quick, active, energy levels through the roof. But this only lasts about 30 seconds.
Really? Yeah.
It's a very short high. And that come down hits you hard, extremely hard and extremely fast.
Worse than ecstasy.
Worse than ecstasy, I'd say.
Yeah.
Because ecstasy will last a long period of time and then, you know, you'll come around and then you'll start feeling shit gradually.
Yeah.
With crack, it just goes up and then straight down. You know what I mean? Up really fucking high and then down. And then you've got to find the next one to get yourself back up.
Yeah.
But I continued on this path for over a year, smoking crack, you know, and I never really wanted to sell crack because I got into a lot of issues with other people. Because crack is an expensive drug. You know, for a £40 bag that you'll buy on cocaine, that could last you quite a few hours. But £40 on crack, that'll last you half an hour, maybe.
Really? Fuck.
Maybe. So within half an hour, you got to go and try and find another £40. You know, so I had smoked my money. Any money that I had, I'd smoked it instantly. Because it's that addictive. Your mind justifies ways that, oh, it's okay, I'll make more money. Oh, it's okay, I can ask this person for money. Oh, it's okay, you know, I'm going to go work next week or whatever reason. You'll justify it in your head to spend that last penny.
Prioritizing, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just, you know, that it takes over your life, you know, and it takes over all your decisions, all your morals, all your values, anything that you maintained before that. You know, in the life that I was living before, anything that I'd maintained before that had all gone. All moral, all value, all everything. When I started smoking crack, crack was my priority now. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Share with me, did you go on to anything else after that?
After that, yes, I did.
Yeah.
I did. So, you know, smoked crack for a while. Went down, well, you know, got into a lot of issues with smoking crack because of the money. Owing debt collectors, owing other drug dealers, you know. So eventually, you know, there was a day when basically I got caught by these debt collectors, and they, you know, shoved me in a car. They took me, you know, they tied me up. They were doing whatever they were doing to me in the car, and they took me to a field, right? And they put a debt on my head of about, you know, just under £2,000. You know what I mean? I couldn't pay that. I couldn't pay £20. You know, so they took me to a field, you know, and they made me call up my family, call up my parents. And they're saying, look, you either call up your parents or we're taking your arms and your legs. You know what I mean? We're taking it. You know what I mean? You can't just get away for free for this. You know what I mean? These are some big guys, big steroid guys. That was their job. You know, ex-army guys, ex-military guys. Yeah. Shit. You know, and they had a thing. It's like, in my head, this one guy, he had a big thing for me. He was always out for me. Oh, yeah. Always out for me.
Wanted you.
Always out. And I always had it in my head. I always had this paranoia of this guy. You know what I mean? I always had this big fear, like, fuck, I need to avoid this guy. Because he's vicious. I've seen what he's done to people, you know? I'll tell you about another story with him in a minute. But so anyway, my parents got involved. They came to this field where I was at. You know, my mum and my dad both got out of this, and they're fucking scared, shaking, my mum and dad. And I can see them terrified. You know what I mean? Somehow, you know, I don't know what they said to them or whatever, but, you know, I managed to get in the car with my parents and they took me home. You know, my mum, they called up, put fast response in the house, you know, police fast response in the house just in case they came. You know what I mean? Because they knew where we lived. You know, I'll explain why I went homeless. You know what I mean? This is part of the reason why I went homeless. But anyway, so then my parents said, you know what, you're going down to London. I said, you're going to go live with your auntie. You know, my auntie's a criminal barrister. You know, she's like, you're going to go live with her, you know, and get away from Stoke. So I thought, okay, cool. I understand. You know, if that's what you want me to do, I'll go.
You just saved me.
You just saved my life.
Like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, I go down there, right? And, you know, for some time, you know, I'm thinking, oh, things are all right. It only took me a week to find a crack dealer in London.
Shit.
Took me a week.
Yeah.
That was it. And I'm off to the races again, you know, doing things that, you know, shit, just recreating the life that I was living in Stoke. Because you can't run away from your life. It's all up here. You know what I mean? So it doesn't matter where I move to. It followed me. My head followed. I couldn't escape my mind. You know what I mean? I couldn't run away from my mind. So I went down to my auntie, and then, you know, I'm doing the same thing. I'm smoking weed. I'm smoking crack. You know, and then I ended up getting into a situation with some drug dealers down there. You know, because in my mind, it's a good idea to start working with some drug dealers to make some money so I can buy some crack. That was a good idea. You know, that was a great idea. That was an epiphany. You know what I mean? And then eventually it got to the point where I was smoking the money that I was supposed to be giving to them. You know, and these were some dangerous people.
Just like the previous ones.
Just like
that you didn't learn from.
Yes, I didn't learn. You know what I mean? I thought, I'd be all right. I'll make the money. I'll just sell my laptop or something. You know what I mean?
So your life is way less valuable than the drugs.
Yes. I'd justify ways. The drugs more important than my life. I'd justify ways to get the drugs and not to help my life or save my life. You know what I mean? And anyway, so yeah, them people ended up fine. Like I was living in a shared accommodation. I moved out my auntie's, you know, living in the shared accommodation. They ran through the house, destroyed the house. Police were called, everything. I'm on top of the window, just thinking, fuck, do I just end it now? I'd had enough. You know what I mean? I'd had enough. I was high on crack. I had no more crack left. You know what I mean? And these people running through the house, and I could hear them downstairs. You know, I could hear them running through it. There was about 5 people living in this house. You know, I could hear them going from room to room. Mine was the last room, and I'm sitting on the window on the top floor thinking, do I just end it now?
How come it was a shared apartment?
Because it was shared living. It was like it's a house, but everyone has their own room. You know what I mean?
I'm with you. Okay,
so I'd pay however much for my room, but then we'd all share a
you
kitchen.
wasn't living with your auntie?
I did for the first month or 2. And then I moved out. Because what I'd done was I'd actually done an insurance job on my car. I'd crashed my car on purpose to get the money. Because I knew I was going to be coming down to London and I had no money. You know what I mean? So I crashed my car. I organised with my friend, you know, put my seatbelt on 30 mile an hour, come around the corner, smash straight in the back of my friend's BMW. Yeah. So I thought, fucking perfect.
Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, smash, you know what I mean? Like a test dummy. And that's the first time I'd ever crashed at that speed before. But my head was like, I'm going to get this money.
How was that then when you crashed?
Oh, it was mental. It was mental. I understood why you have to wear a seatbelt. You know, because I was only 30 mile an hour, but I didn't brake. There was no brake because I needed to tell the insurance company that my brakes had failed. You know what I mean? So there was
shit.
It was like I was in it, and that was it. You know what I mean? Because it's like, and this was my nice car. You know, when I say nice, it was the nicest car I'd ever bought. You know, Ford Fiesta 1.6 white car.
You were quite proud of it.
I was proud of it. But once the crack took over, that was just a bill coming in. You know what I mean? And I knew how much the insurance was. You know what I mean? So anyway, boom, crashed into the back of BMW. Couple months later, you know, this situation had happened, and I gone down to my auntie's, and the money came in. So then I went and got a shared, you know, living.
Oh, okay.
So that lasted a little bit of time. This money that I was on paying for the rent. You know what I mean? But that also went into drugs. It didn't last long in the shared living because obviously the situation with these other people that I got involved with, that was it. My mum drove down to London, picked me up again, shipped me straight back up to Stoke. Where can I go now? Who can I take from? When I'd run out of people, it started to escalate. Then I started stealing lawnmowers, cars, bikes, everything. You know what I mean? Kids' scooters, anything. I didn't care if you were a kid or a granny. I'd take your wheelchair.
Just no morals.
No morals, no values. I'd take if I saw something value, I'll take that.
Yeah.
You know what I
So
mean?
it sounds like you just madly in love with that drug, just getting high, madly in love with escape.
I would get away with it. I would constantly get away with it. With the crime, I'm so lucky to not have been caught. You know, like I said, I went everywhere with a mask on, but, you know, I believe in my higher power. My higher power protected me from many situations. You know, I mean, I have a strong connection with my higher power. You know, my ancestors are my higher power. You know, my nan, my grandfather, all of them people before me, I believe that they've looked after me. You know, because of the things that I've managed to get away with, the situations I managed to avoid, but that just kept me going. You know what I mean? One thing after another. And another thing, I remember when I found out that there was a law on co-ops, a no aggravation policy.
Oh shit!
Oh, that was it.
Yeah.
No aggravation. No, what? So so that what? They're not allowed to touch me. They're not allowed to stop me. That was it. I was hitting co-ops after co-ops after co-ops.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Food, because I had these people. I had like older people that, you know what I mean? I'd go and take the food too. Yeah,
What I was asking for? What are some of your most popular orders?
Okay, the most popular steaks. Because this woman had these pit bulls, these like 4 or 5 pit bulls, and she couldn't get out of the house. You know, she was immobile. You know, she couldn't get out of the house. And I'd go and get these steaks. You know, I'd go to the Lidl or Tesco or Co-op. Tesco, I stopped doing it because one time I did a petrol job on them, and I just, you know, I took the petrol left, and then they had my fucking face everywhere. So I didn't go anywhere near Tesco after that. But the Co-ops, no aggravation policy. I thought, oh, perfect. I did the same Co-op multiple times. You know, getting these steaks and then running off down the road, getting 20 quid, go and get my drugs. And that was a repeat process, and I thought, perfect. You know what I mean? I'm not hurting somebody else.
It's like a 24-hour job, isn't it?
It was, yeah.
24-hour job, man.
Doing drugs is a 24/7 job. It was a graft. You know what I mean?
Madness, man.
You know,
go on to that flick again, because you've gone back to your parents. You've moved in.
Yeah. Sorry.
You're in the den.
So sorry, that's it. Yeah. So the flick. Got a bit of track there, didn't I? So I'm in the den, you know, and one time after about a week, my mum comes up to the field with me with the phone. You know, she's like, "Speak to this woman."
Oh yeah.
I pick up the phone. Who the fuck's this? You know what I mean? Who am I speaking to?
Yeah.
And this is the woman that basically speaks to people before they come into rehab to assess them, to see what their behaviors are like, you know, to see, you know, what their problems are, stuff like that. And I'm angry with this woman. You know, I'm getting pissed off. I'm like, I don't care, you know what I mean? She puts the phone down on me. And my mum just looked at me like, what did you just do? You know what I mean? Why did you just do that? Please call her back, begging me to call her back. And I said to her, who is it? Who am I talking to? She's like, this is a rehab in Thailand.
Oh, yeah.
This is a rehab in Thailand. It's called Hope. Because I knew I wasn't going to I told her, I'm not going to any rehab in England. I'll just run away.
Yeah.
So as soon as she said to me, Thailand, I thought, I've got no issues there.
Oh,
you know what I mean? I don't owe anybody money in Thailand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Fresh start.
But it was weird because there was no thought of there's no drugs there. You know, I hadn't made that thing that, okay, I'm going to stop. That hadn't started yet.
No.
I still wasn't ready to stop. I just thought, ticket to Thailand.
Yeah, holiday, yeah.
Holiday.
Incentive in it.
Yeah, I wasn't ready, but I could see in my mum's eyes. So I called her back and I'm like, look, I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were. You know, just apologizing. So she ran me through the process. You know, do I have any history with suicide attempts? I'm like, nope, even though I had. You know what I mean? Do I have any history with psychosis? No, good. You know, just ticking boxes to get in. You know what I mean? And they accepted me. A week later, I'm on the plane, flying off to rehab. They picked me up at the airport.
How was that flight?
It's I don't know, to be honest, because it's weird, because it's like I was high enough to kind of get through the flight, but I didn't have any drugs on me.
Nothing at all, no painkillers
or there was nothing. There was I didn't have any drugs, so it was very weird, you know, that I'd managed to stop. Because with monkey dust, you don't need a detox. It's not like alcohol. You know what I mean? Same as crack. You don't need a detox. You know what I mean? And I'd managed to be on some kind of mental plane. I don't know how to describe it, but I was okay with it.
Yeah, it sounds like you had
like
some excitement. You had some excitement
in
you. There was a new chapter.
Yes, that was it. That's all there must have been, because it was a new chapter. It was a new beginning. I knew that this could be a new start of something new. I still had fear. I was thinking I'm gonna fuck everything up, and that lasted going through, through rehab. Having this constant fear, I'm gonna fuck up. I'm gonna fuck up. I always fuck up. I never finish. I never start. All these negative beliefs, core beliefs about myself. So anyway, they picked me up from the airport straight into rehab, put me in a room, and I just remember thinking, fuck, I'm here. Like, shit. I'm in, you know what I mean? I'm in rehab. Like, this could be the change. You know what I mean? I hadn't met everybody else yet who was in the rehab. There was about 30 people in this rehab. And, it took a while. In them about 2 weeks, 2 weeks to a month, because I was in rehab for a total of 3 months in the primary treatment for 3 months. And then after that, I went into a sober house for 3 months, right?
Okay.
But in the first month of me being in that rehab, I still had my street behaviors. I still had my old mentality. You know what I mean? Within the first or second night, I got up to the kitchen, grabbed the knife, and put it under my pillow because I didn't trust people. There's certain things I have to do to remind myself of who I am and where I've come from. Every week. You know what I mean? There's things that I've got to do. You know what I mean? So step work, sponsorship. So I have a sponsor, someone I call if there's anything going wrong, or I'm, if I'm on the brink of using or whatever, or there's shit going on. I don't think about using anymore. That's gone. Now I have other behaviors that I need to keep track of. You know what I mean? Because if I start acting out on them behaviors, it's only a matter of time before it goes backwards,
Yes, that focus.
Yes, it's
and drifting.
That's it. So I'm always checking. I have to check in with my sponsor, do my step work, meetings. That's the most important thing for me. It's constant meetings, regular meetings. And perfect. And we're in the perfect place for it. There's a lot of people, that are in these meetings that relate. That I get that same feelings I had when I was in rehab. I've created the things that I had in rehab, I've created it in my own life. That's what they teach us to do, is to create what you're being taught in rehab outside. Because if you don't, you're going to go back to your old ways. And I realized that, you know what I mean? So, the fellowship that I have, the people that I have around me now, that's what kind of keeps me going. You know what I mean? I've just got to stay on top of my stuff. Beautiful. You know what I mean? I've got to keep growing. I've got to keep, doing the things like meditation, writing, just self-development. I've got to keep doing that. But now, for me, it's my mind is still on money. It sees money. It's like, oh, I need money. Money. And I can get distracted sometimes, And I have to speak to my sponsor about it. I'm like, look, man, my head is just thinking about money. You know what I mean? And there's a healthy way to do it, and there's an unhealthy way to do it. My mind still has its old behaviors. I will obsess to the point where I'm not sleeping. You know what I mean? I'm thinking about how I'm going to get money, and the more thinking I do, the less money I make. You know what I mean? So it becomes destructive again.
What do you think the solution behind that is? Behind focusing on so much of your attention on money.
Solution is having a routine, stability, conversation, meetings, sharing what's going on, sharing how I'm feeling. That's my solution. Is going to the meetings. Because before, drugs were my solution. Drugs weren't the problem. Drugs were the solution to the things I was feeling.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They helped me to get through life and to carry on. When I didn't want to feel all the guilt and the shame, whatever. So when I'm thinking too much about money, or I'm thinking, at the start of when me getting clean, I was always thinking about women. You know what I mean? Women and money and cars and girls, all this stuff, all this exterior stuff. What brings me back is the meetings. Sharing, look, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's going on in my mind. This is what I'm being drawn to. And I'd get the support. As soon as I'd share it out, as soon as I'd release it, there we go.
Comes back.
Yeah, that's it. It comes back and I got the help. Yeah. I can relax.
What really helps me is upset, and I don't lose sort of gain from it, basically. Is obsessing about becoming a better person. Obsessing about developing my knowledge, just self-development. Do you know what I mean? I just feel like I can't lose with that.
It's I feel it when I stop doing the things that I've been doing for the past 2.5 years. When I stop, then the dark days come back.
Temptation.
The temptations, the thoughts, the overthinking. That's what I struggle with a lot recently, is the overthinking. If I stop meditating, I feel it. It's like anything. It's like going to the gym. You know what I mean? Or training or whatever. If you keep doing it, you progress. But when you stop for a couple of days and then you try to go back again, it's hard. You feel it.
Yeah.
Same with meditation. Same with anything else. You stop doing it. You stop practicing it. You lose it.
And also, you're opening the door for other things to come in.
Yes.
So when you stop doing those things that have helped you level up, you're inviting or welcoming in, like I said, leaving the door open for old habits and maybe new habits that don't serve you.
Yeah, that's it.
Totally, man.
The way I see it, the way I've always, like when I've shared it and stuff, is my addiction is still very much alive.
Yes.
And my addiction is doing press-ups whilst I sleep. It is, whilst I'm asleep, my addiction is doing press-ups in the night, so I have to wake up the next day and do some press-ups.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I have to fight it. I have to not fight it more. I have to have a level of strength. I have to have a level of routine, structure, patience, tolerance. You know what I mean? I have to do certain things so that that addiction that's in my mind still, because I'll be an addict for the rest of my life. I'll be in recovery for the rest of my life. But if I don't keep doing the things that I'm supposed to be doing, this guy's going to get strong and he's going to come and take it away,
Yeah. So that level of obsession and addiction is not bad. It's not bad. As long, right there, as long as it's in something positive.
Yes.
You with me?
Yes and no.
Okay, go for it.
And I'll explain why no. Because as an addict, the obsession and the compulsion, no matter what it is towards, it is destructive and it is damaging.
Okay.
So, for example, if I put my obsessions and my compulsion into money, I'm gonna put money at the top.
Yeah.
My recovery is gonna come second. My family is gonna become third.
Yeah.
My girlfriend's fourth. Yeah. Everything else will fall under it.
Yeah.
And I will focus on this mainly, and neglect all this stuff. Because I'm obsessing over money. I'm not spending time with my girlfriend. I'm not calling my mum. I'm not doing the things I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. Going back to, it needs to be a clean obsession.
Yes.
And how are you getting the money? You with me?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because getting money is a massive scale.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So me doing this and getting money, brilliant.
Yeah.
Me sharing my knowledge. Me being obsessed with developing my body.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
You with me? So ask yourself, whatever you're obsessed with, how does it make you feel after? You know what I mean? Is it serving you?